From environmental storytelling to asynchronous multiplayer, today we're going over the Good Game Design Iceberg made by us here at GameDev.tv in a sort of response video to the Bad Game Design Iceberg video we made not too long ago. A quick reminder for those that don't know, an iceberg chart is a collection of themes, ideas, or anything really that falls under an umbrella category. These categories can be as specific or as general as you like, and as you progress further down the iceberg, the more niche, unheard of, or strange the entries become. So, as before, grab a drink, sit back, and enjoy. Layer 1. Aspects known by everyone. This layer contains entries that you're likely to have heard of regardless of your gaming or game dev experience. Intuitive controls. Video games have been around for a while, and over time, players have grown used to certain control schemes doing the same things across different games. For example, the WASD keys controlling movement on PC. Developers could, in theory, implement whatever control schemes they like, but it's considered good game design, or maybe just basic courtesy, to stick to controls that other games have used so that players can intuitively understand how to play with minimal explanation. Meaningful player choice. In our last video, we touched on the idea of useless choices, and this is the opposite of that. It's not necessary to include choice in video games for them to be considered good or fun, but if you do include a choice of some kind, whether it's choosing between weapons or tools or making some kind of story decision, players generally appreciate it if that choice has some consequence to it. Clear visual language. Clear visual language refers to games that have a clear and consistent visual style that leads to good readability. This applies across entire games, but is especially important when it comes to UI elements such as menus or inventories. It's considered good game design as making people feel lost or overwhelmed in a game is a surefire way of losing them as a player. Some games also include accessibility options that make readability even clearer to allow players with certain disabilities to enjoy the game. Play to win, not pay to win. This entry refers to games that allow their players to purchase things using in-game currency, such as gold coins, sci-fi credits, that are strictly earned by playing. This is considered good game design as it allows for deeper customization and immersion and rewards the player for playtime and skill rather than only rewarding those who can afford to pay extra real-life money. Horizontal progression. Off the back of playing to win, horizontal progression refers to games that don't give any competitive advantage to any player, regardless of skill level or experience. An example of this lies in Sea of Thieves, whereby every item that can be bought for either in-game or real currency only provides players with new cosmetic items, such as clothing, pets, or new ship designs, that don't offer advantages. There is an argument to be made, however, that in certain games such as Call of Duty or Rainbow Six Siege, even cosmetic purchases can impact the fairness of gameplay, such as paying for certain outfits that blend in more with the environment. Layer 2. Recognized by many, thought deeply about by few. Environmental storytelling. Environmental storytelling is when a story or sequence of events is implied through the environment rather than explicitly stated with words. It's the same concept as show, don't tell in writing. For example, you could have somebody explain to me that there was a car crash, or you could show me the wreckage of the scene. That's a super basic example, but the next time you're thinking of stating something, think instead about how you could show that it happened visually. You'd be surprised with what you come up with. Guided exploration. This entry refers to game environments that are designed to guide the player from one point to another without explicitly stating it. Sometimes this is obvious, and sometimes this guidance is completely subconscious, and you can even leave the player feeling like they chose the path to get there. It's similar to environmental storytelling, but with a direction in mind. Game feel. Game feel refers to aspects of a game that make it feel good or bad to play. Strangely, these features often go unnoticed if they're there, but are extremely obvious when they're missing. This could be appropriate recoil on a gun, juicy sound effects, or screen shake when something impactful happens. Including and getting these features right is considered good game design because it can be a big part of what keeps players coming back to a game, even if they can't put their finger on what it is they're enjoying. Ludonarrative consistency. To explain this entry, I'll first explain its counterpart. Ludonarrative dissonance is defined as the disconnect between the story told by gameplay and the story told by a game's plot. For example, you could be having a loud, explosive shootout in one room that ends with a cutscene in which the main villain didn't know you were there. Or, especially in open world games, you could be told that the world is going to end in the next mission, and then you go off and complete 20 side quests before this happens. Ludonarrative consistency, on the other hand, then, is when gameplay and story are in sync with one another, and there aren't many, if any, jarring differences between the two. Dead Space is often praised for this. Attack patterns. This entry refers to enemies within games that attack you with some kind of rhythm or in a predictable way. There's a balance to be had between an enemy being too predictable and completely random, and finding that balance generally leads to an enjoyable and rewarding experience. As with each death, players will feel like they have learned or can learn from their mistakes, rather than the encounter being up to luck to get past. Easter eggs. Easter eggs in video games are hidden secrets scattered throughout games and levels. They generally don't directly impact gameplay, but are more often there to pay homage to some aspect of the gaming community or the developers of the game. Throughout the years, Easter eggs have taken many forms, from being literal chocolate eggs to more elaborate side quests with ciphers and puzzle-solving skills being required to find them. Layer 3. Mostly known by designers or hardcore gamers. Invisible tutorials. This entry refers to games that teach the player its rules, controls, or mechanics in a way that doesn't break their immersion of the game, or, in the best cases, teaches the player without them even realizing they're being taught anything. Valve's Portal is a great example of this. Emergent gameplay. Emergent gameplay refers to situations in video games that arise as a result of gameplay mechanics interacting with each other rather than because they were scripted to happen. For example, in Tears of the Kingdom, we're allowed to build unique objects and contraptions that do things not specifically intended by the developer. Other examples can be small, such as moving a box under your feet to jump to a higher place, or the whole game can be based around it, such as Teardown or arguably Kerbal Space Program. It's considered good game design as it allows the players to feel they have a direct impact on the world and makes them feel smart for achieving things in unique ways. Not to mention, it's just a hell of a lot of fun. Diegetic UI. This entry refers to user interface elements such as health bars, ammo counters, waypoint markers, etc. that are canonically inside the game world, as in they are real as far as the characters in the game are concerned, rather than being displayed on screen for the benefit of the player. A good example could be that your character holds a compass in their hands to guide them, or your ammo counter is displayed on a digital screen on the side of your sci-fi weapon. There's an argument to be made that neither diegetic nor non-diegetic UI is better than the other, as it does depend on the kind of game being made. For example, horror games might benefit from diegetic UI as it reduces the amount of immersion being broken, whereas a game like The Sims benefits from displaying information clearly on your screen. Expressive interactivity. Expressive interactivity refers to games that allow players to interact with the world purely for a more immersive experience. For example, some games prompt you to take a seat at certain serene locations for no other reason than to watch the sunrise or chill with a friend. These examples can range dramatically, from playing cards with NPCs to emoting with another player. These features are powerful because they don't reward the player mechanically but enrich the experience emotionally. They reinforce world depth, player agency, and a sense of place. Freedom of movement. Freedom of movement refers to games that don't stop the player moving unless absolutely necessary. A lot of games, especially story-focused ones, fall victim to trapping their players in not only unskippable cutscenes, but unskippable or highly restrictive gameplay moments, such as quick-time events that go on for too long, or chase sequences in which the player has no autonomy. These kinds of sequences aren't always a bad thing, but gamers will pretty much never complain about being able to move as much as possible. Even if you, as the developer, think it might ruin a particular moment, I can promise you your players will thank you. Offline play. This entry refers to games that allow you to play them with no internet connection. It may seem like common sense to allow this, but in the modern era of gaming, more and more games are not just advising, but requiring a constant internet connection to play, and it feels like a breath of fresh air to be able to hop on whenever you want. Layer 5. Bottom of the iceberg. Supporting technical exploits. While not directly game design, this entry refers to game developers who actively support and oftentimes encourage players to push the mechanics and coding of a game to its near limit. For example, speedrunning communities love to find glitches or bugs within games that help them to complete a 10-hour game in 5 minutes, and some developers intentionally leave these exploits in, as at the end of the day, if it encourages fun and cooperation, nobody loses out. No/limited copyright enforcement. No or limited copyright enforcement refers to game companies that don't punish people for creating works based on an original IP. The reason this is considered a good thing, though not necessarily good game design, is because allowing fans to generate content inspired by or directly related to a base game is a great way to encourage creativity and community, whilst also inadvertently extending the lifespan of a game. Valve are notoriously relaxed about fan games and creations, other examples being Five Nights at Freddy's and the Metro series. However, please always investigate these matters yourself first if you plan to make a fan game, as this video will definitely be outdated at some point and should not be taken as current fact. AI director and behavioural heuristics. This entry refers to games that contain enemies with AI that not only responds to players' actions, but actively adapts to counter them. An example of this is from Creative Assembly's Alien Isolation, in which the alien will adapt its hunting strategies based on your survival methods. Though difficult to implement, it makes for far more immersive NPC behaviour. Game-specific accessibility options. Accessibility options generally are adjustable settings in a video game that allow for certain aspects of the game to be changed to aid players with various disabilities so that they can better enjoy their gaming experience. Game-specific accessibility options then are settings unique to a game that the developers have gone out of their way to include that might not be obvious from the get-go. Some examples of these have caused controversy amongst gamers, however, as they can be seen as pandering to people without genuine disabilities, such as an arachnophobia mode that was implemented into Call of Duty Black Ops 6 that would disable the legs of spider-like enemies. However, it's worth taking a look at your own game and seeing if there's anything about your control scheme or gameplay that could be adjusted to better include disabled players. Asynchronous multiplayer. This entry is a little tricky as there doesn't seem to be a completely agreed upon definition, but it generally refers to games that have an element of multiplayer that doesn't require two or more players to be active at the same time for them to interact. For example, Dark Souls players can leave each other notes without needing to be online or connected to each other at the same time. It's considered good game design if it's possible to implement because it allows for the feeling of a shared world without the constant requirement of playing with others. Well, that's it for this video. Be sure to let me know in the comments what you thought to these entries. Did I miss anything important? Would you have reshuffled any of them? And if you want to see the bad game design iceberg explained, we'll leave a link to that in the description. See you for now.